Okay. Hi, Julian. Good to see you.
Hi, Gina. Good
Hi,
to see
Julian.
You. Hi. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Okay, Hannah, should we kick off?
Yeah, let's go for it.
You want the actual?
Cool. So, hi everybody. I'm Hannah from Better Not Stop, and I've been putting together these workshops with Gina, which is every Tuesday at 11 during B Corp Month, to go through the different areas of the assessment, to just discuss what those areas mean and ways in which businesses can use the assessment and the framework to create a more sustainable business for themselves. My business is Better Not Stop. We help businesses become B Corp certified, and we also run something called the Better Business Network with 3 other business owners, which is a peer-to-peer accountability groups in which we work together to increase both our social and environmental impact as business owners, but also to support each other and help make sure we don't suffer from occupational burnout, which, if you don't know, has been now classified as a disease by the World Health Organization. So definitely a problem and a huge issue that I know a lot of business owners suffer from. So if you want to discuss anything B Corp related with me post-event, then I'll stick my details in the chat. And also, if you want to speak about business networking and accountability groups, I can also chat about that. For the chat, it will be Gina hosting. So I will simply be keeping an eye on the chat boxes, and I will also be fielding any questions that you may have to Gina and the speakers. So if you don't feel comfortable getting up or talking on the camera and you want to ask a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. If you want to put in your LinkedIn so people can connect with you, pop it in the chat box. I'll be taking notes as well. So if you want me to send through my notes, which will have like any links that the guys mention or any websites they talk about, I'll compile it all basically in a list and send it out to everybody afterwards. If you want access to that, just send me a private message on the Zoom chat and I'll send it over to you. I think that's about it for me. If you've come in late, Gina is recording this, so if you don't want your picture on YouTube, then please turn your camera off and change your name on your Zoom chat so that keeps private for you. So it is being recorded, so just be conscious of that. And yeah, hopefully that answers all of your questions. So yeah, if you have any questions privately to me in the chat, and I can zoom it through to the guys, or you can put it in the chat and I'll make sure it's passed on. The call should be around an hour long, an hour workshop. We'll probably stay a little bit afterwards for some Q&As, but if you need to drop off afterwards and you don't have time for the Q&As, that's fine, just drop off. And obviously, if you need to leave before the workshop's finished, it will be going up on YouTube, and I'll be showing the full notes afterwards, so you just need to let me know your details. So I've probably repeated myself 100 times there, but I'm Hannah, I'm from Better Not Stop, and yeah, I'll speak to you in the chat. That's me.
Thanks, Hannah, that's great. And thanks to those who've just joined. We've got Kiki, Lynn, Alice, Michelle and Sophia. Great to see you. It's been a while. Thanks for joining us. So really looking forward to today. A couple of guests who have joined us. So first I'll start. I'm Gina Mula from Mulashaker. I previously founded a retail design agency, and last year we founded Mulashaker, which was more of a purpose-led design collaborative. So we work with global brands and organizations, and we activate change through purposeful design, designing and building experiences at retail, whether that's physically and digital, and through business change. And the guests that we have on today, I met through the business of brand. And we've got John Race from MCM Architects and Deepak Palmer. Deepak's design director, John is the MD. And MCM are known for designing a future that people love, which is amazing. And we've also got Lisa Drake from Elliott Wood, structural engineers who are known for engineering a better society. So 2 very kind of purpose-led companies, both companies very much focus on bringing people to think and work together in very different ways. And really the whole subject matter for B Corp Month, covering suppliers, customers, governance, environment, and people, is very much around moving from 20th century thinking to 21st century thinking, and fantastic for you to come today, so thanks guys. So today's subject is, what does it mean to be a better steward to your customers? It's a huge question, and I'm sure we could all spend hours and hours talking about it, but I was really kind of excited going through the research for both companies. So John, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay, because we connected. I saw you getting interviewed by Lindsay. We've both actually been interviewed by Lindsay, but I was really interested in your thoughts and ideas around the changing workplace, particularly through the pandemic last year. And I saw lots of similarities with the changing face of retail and having more kind of combined spaces. So I guess my first question to you really, and it's a big question, so kind of take your time, break it down as you wish, but as more businesses grow sustainably, how do we and how should we do things in different ways to get to know our customer?
I think I'm joining up into professional meeting, but
sorry, I just mute something.
Okay. How should we better get to know our customer? I guess maybe just pedaling back a little bit, just in terms of what we do as an organization, for those on the call and listening. Ultimately, we design workspaces for organizations, both big and small organizations. And those workspaces, offices, are spaces which are intended for people to do their best work. So in terms of how we better connect with our customer, we've always felt that what we deliver fabulous looking spaces, but it's really not the point of what we do. So the better way to connect with our customer is to really understand the need of the end users that are going to actually experience the spaces that we leave behind. And that is a real measure of the success of a project, not that it looks fabulous. I would say to a client, well, of course it'll look fabulous. You're working with interior designers and architects, but that's not the point. Actually, it's, will it deliver to the purpose of the business and the needs of the people that are using it? So for us, connecting with our customer at a really sort of deep level, or at a kind of purpose level, is really key in terms of shaping a space that truly delivers. Sorry, my phone. Sorry, I just turned that off. So yeah, really, that's the nub of of why it's so important to connect with your customer. It's not about what it looks like and it's really how it performs and how it serves the needs of the customer. So you got to know your customer much better than perhaps you have in the past.
So you've got something at the moment called Skunk Works, haven't you, where you are really doing kind of deep dive and exploring, and maybe this is the question to yourself or Deepak, where you're really deep diving into people's needs. And I think the first one I saw was in reaction to the pandemic and the changing face of how people are working, and it really kind of looks at, you know, what the needs spaces really needed to address, and access to services that people wouldn't normally have access to, and really considering health and wellness and breaking down those kind of societal barriers. Can you talk us a little bit more about that, perhaps, Deepak?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we can underestimate what the last 12 months have been like for people. People have gone through an immense time of change. And for many people, they're still coming to terms with that. It's something we realized at the very beginning of the pandemic was, you know, there's been some absolutely awful things that have come out of the last 12 months, but actually there's actually real opportunity for people to think more holistically about their work-life balance, their well-being, you know, how their work affects their daily lives. So we decided to launch a Skunk Works program, which is a very high intensity research program. We engaged with many of our clients to try and understand how they were feeling, how their employee base was feeling. You know, many of them hadn't worked from home previously, and suddenly they were all forced to. you know, it's really kind of accelerated the world of work probably forward by about 5 or 6 years. Even the most traditional of our clients are suddenly working in a flexible way, something we've been talking about for almost 10 years. So it's been a really exciting period of change in that sense. And I suppose for a lot of them, they don't know what they don't know. You know, they don't know how to work in a very different way. Therefore, I think our role has been to kind of inspire and show them this vision of a better future. And that's really where I think that our value has been in creating that really high intensity research model where we can base our decisions on data, but also kind of real emotional intelligence and connecting with them on a deeper level.
One of the things that gets talked about more so, I think, at the moment is the third space and the blurring lines between work, play, education, retail. You know, we're seeing the likes of John Lewis selling huge parts of their Oxford Street buildings, and obviously the Topshop on Oxford Street as well. So these, you know, the need to understand customers' needs when it comes to all of those things, not just, you know, a siloed approach to how we live and work. Do you think more so now than ever in terms of customer needs, it's more about the health and well-being as opposed to, you know, I go here to buy X, I go there to buy Y. Do you think design now should be a responsibility for us all to just consider the impact first before we even put pen to paper?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely it should do. I think one of the things that we need to build on on the back of the pandemic is, you know, what people have suddenly been given was choice. Okay, they've been given restrictions as well because they've had to not do, you know, work in their offices and such. But in terms of the way that they work, you know, the conventions of normal ways of working were thrown out of the window overnight, and people were given trust to work in different places. And I think in the future, immediate future, having the option to work in other spaces, the office, the home, third spaces, is you know, giving people the choice to be able to be their best and do their best work wherever they need to be, and also help people proactively achieve a balanced life. And I think for the first time, we speak to lots of our customers at the moment. It's like, you know, work-life balance was a kind of concept that everyone got that no one knew how to deliver to. And actually work-life balance is achievable, providing you take away the conventions and stays of some of the sort of, you know, restrictions that were placed on people, and provide you know, the freedom to work in different ways. So in terms of designing those sorts of spaces, whether it's a retail space, workspaces, or retail spaces that can be used for workspaces, offices, considerations for what the home looks like, where people live, all of those sorts of things are all really key drivers in terms of what the designer needs to talk to their clients about before putting pen to paper.
Thanks, Sean. Lisa, I was reading a couple of things actually. I saw an interview with Garrett Elliott, which is on the website, and also I was reading about the Elliott Wood manifesto, and you've got a manifesto of change, a platform called Ethics, which is education, technology, health, infrastructure, culture, and sustainability, and it really addresses all of those things in a very holistic way, and it all considers our human basic needs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and why as structural engineers are looking so much deeper in you know, why we need a manifesto for change?
Sure. I mean, our thinking on this dated back to about 2017, and we started thinking, okay, we've been around for nearly 25 years, and at that point, our industry, and in many respects still now, but our industry was about actually driving it down and really commoditizing it to be all about price and all about choice because of price, or claims around creativity, etc. And actually it got us questioning, what are we here for? Why are we doing what we're doing? And John mentioned the word legacy. And I think the legacy piece became really important for Elliott Wood as structural engineers in terms of, well, we do have an impact on the world, we do have an impact on society and the community and society that everybody lives. So actually we can play a role in that. And that then led on to us developing the framework of ethics, which the framework for us really was, well, there's 6 pillars there. And if we can look through the lens of either the environment, of education, technology, health, infrastructure, culture, and sustainability, even if we just look through one of those lenses, when we're considering what we build, why we build, how we build, and look at how we can reveal opportunities to do it in a different way, actually that will contribute to actually moving society forward. And I think in terms of sort of the customers, I think there is a move from actually just selecting based on product and what the service features are, for example, to a move to question, well, why? Not what am I buying, but why am I buying it? And what's the legacy? What's the impact going to be on the environment, on society, on me, on the people around me? And I think for us, it was really about the manifesto was really a call to action for our industry to start thinking about those things, and actually as an industry working more collaboratively to take responsibility. And we have a duty to the planet, to society, to be thinking about these things. But actually, it really was an attempt to get the industry to work far more collaboratively to try and address some of those issues as well.
Thanks. What I think I'm loving at the moment is, irrelevant of what sector you're from and what expertise you have, there's this real common voice that comes across, and it's around this sense of responsibility, and that things do have to change and need to change, but actually it's a positive, it's a benefit, and it's going to help everyone and everything in every part of our lives. And I think certainly from my experience working with brands over many years, it was very much around, how do you make that product stand out? How do you create that connection to purchase? It's almost like that becomes the last thing as part of the brief now. It's around, how do you create a deep and meaningful story that means something? Yeah. And how do you create that opportunity to consider whether, that purchase is going to add value to your life or to your day? And I think, sustainability, one of the things, Lisa, I was reading about, in the ethics platform was, is sustainability even enough? It's certainly more around a circular conversation. And I know, John and Deepak, that's something you've looked at as well. When we're considering spaces and when we're considering our needs, how do you, John, I'll come back to you on this one if that's okay. Mm-hmm. How do you see from kind of last year to even now, less than 12 months, how much have you seen change already in terms of the conversations or even kind of activating any kind of changes in design? Has that changed considerably, or are you seeing small steps at the moment?
I think on some levels it's changed considerably. I think in terms of our own thinking, in terms about what we do and why we do it, I think it's helped us, the last several months have helped us kind of, it's polarized our view in terms of what we do. And, talk to many architects, designers, or anyone in the built environment, they're often focused around space and things that they create. So, because ultimately that's what they're employed to create, or employed to create an envelope for a building or an interior fit out or whatever. And I think what it's, our thinking had already been going in this direction for several years before, but in terms of sort of polarizing it into a very focused view, we now think about people before space. And I think that's a really key differentiator in terms of connecting with our customers and actually providing something that is substantive and has value beyond simply just being good and being, you know, looking good. So I think we talk about that a lot in our business and with our clients and with the team around, you know, it starts with the needs of the people and the legacy we're going to leave behind, and the space follows. It's the inevitable solution that fits behind the needs of the people. And I think that's probably the biggest change that we're seeing, people getting that more. Customers are particularly thinking, actually, yeah, that resonates. You understand my needs a bit better. This, you know, it's let's not dismiss the value of the created thing, but actually let's understand why we're doing it in the first place and go back to basics.
And I think the power of collaboration, certainly from my perspective, is really elevating this stuff at speed. I think there's a lot more opportunity for people to come together and not see it as competition, but to just get all these different minds together, cross-sector minds together, which I've never seen before, actually. I mean, the fact that the three of us have had different conversations just lends itself to that, and it's almost what, you know, we're all moving in the same direction, which is fantastic. Which is, I guess, where the B Corp conversation comes from. I mean, for me, I read about B Corp because of the likes of, you know, Patagonia and Finisterre, but actually, you know, financial institutions, and I know yourself, John, and Deepak, you've been going through the B Corp certification. It felt like, for me, and I don't know if you felt the same, but, you know, I kind of created one agency and moved away from that. And last year I felt like if I was going to create another business, it had to be a B Corp. It was almost, you know, I had to put a stake in the ground that actually allowed us to make a real legal commitment that whatever we were going to do, we were going to consider the impact of everything we do. And I know you don't have to be a B Corp to do that. And I think we're all on here because we realize, you know, as founders or owners or working in big companies, we understand that we can do more to make that difference. What made you guys consider B Corp, and why do you think that's important for you?
I think for us it was about standing up, and it's you know, there's lots of talking, there's not always action, and actually B Corp is a way of actually acknowledging actually we're serious about the action. We're serious, we can do the talk, but actually we're serious about putting it into practice and actually being held accountable for it. And I think that was one of the sort of key things that drove us to wanting to do this. It just felt like the right thing to do, and authenticates the conversations that we have with our customers, in terms of, you know, this is we genuinely believe this is what we're doing, and we're held accountable to it as well. So I think it's that authenticity thing that's really, really important to us.
I think it also just aligns so well with our purpose as well, Gina. You know, it was almost a no-brainer for us because, you know, our purpose is to design a future that people love, and the things that B Corp stands for is fully aligned to that. So, you know, it's almost like we couldn't not do it. And, you know, I think it's testament to see how quickly the B Corp community is growing. You know, like you said, the next 30 to 50 years are going to be paramount. The decisions we make are going to kind of shape the future of mankind. So, you know, individuals can do their bit, but it really depends on government and businesses to take the lead.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Hannah and I actually met on a B Leaders course. So not only are both of our companies B Corps, I wanted to deepen my understanding of that whole B Corp process, and really how I can use that knowledge and experience also working with brands and organizations, whether they become B Corps or not. It's understanding those changes that you can make, which often aren't considerable actually, but like you say, it's just putting that stake in the ground to say, no, we are going to make these changes, and we're going to do it in this way. Yeah. So Lisa, when it comes to Elliott Wood, then, I mean, again, you don't have to be a B Corp to impact change, to be purpose driven, you know, to have ethics, to think end of life, you know, at the beginning of every project. Do you see there's been a shift in sectors on the back of, you know, the Elliott Wood manifesto and driving for that change? Do you think, because, you know, Elliott Wood have stood up, do you think everybody else is now listening and thinking, actually, we need and must follow suit?
We're certainly seeing a shift in people's attitudes, and certainly in the sort of the conversations they're wanting to have with us. There's definitely a move to people wanting to have the conversations around impact, whether that's because we've put our heads up and said this is what we need to do, or whether actually that's just a general move in society, who knows. But certainly the sort of putting yourself out there and actually saying, actually, this is what we stand for. The conversations you have with your clients are different. Is about collaborating with them. It is about, you know, really, I suppose, working through those options of the impact that they can make with your assistance. And you know, John there mentioned around communities, etc. as well. And I think actually that the move from the silo sort of businesses of the 20th century to the 21st century, sort of more community focus, actually it does harness a bigger, I suppose, pressure on clients. If the, you know, the community, it does exert a higher degree of influence, and that's partly why we developed the Building Society off the back of the manifesto, as a place to, as John says, there's so much talk about this stuff, there's so much talk about doing stuff, but actually we launched the Building Society as a co-working collaboration space for the built environment, as a place to do instead of talk. So a place to action change, and bring people together who wanted to do that. And certainly, you know, during the pandemic, and certainly coming out of the pandemic, the people that want to get involved in that movement is definitely on the increase. We're getting a lot more inquiries about how can we get involved. And also on projects, people are really wanting to talk about how they can make a difference as well. And it's about actually, as an industry, pulling together. One of the things that Elliott Wood's launching on the 18th of March in conjunction with the Institution of Structural Engineers is a carbon tool to help engineers who, in, you know, many years ago would be seen as, well, we're not going to share that with other people because it's our USP and an advantage for us. But we're sharing a tool that we use to calculate carbon in a structure with other engineers. And the reason we're doing that is because we feel that actually the more people that can have an impact on the planet, the more people that can have these conversations with the clients, we're going to have a bigger impact. And I think one of the signs of the interest in these issues is that's on the 18th of March, and we've already got 1,600 engineers and people from our industry signed up for that event alone, which for our industry is quite significant. And I think actually is testament to how seriously these issues are being taken by clients as well, and hopefully there's going to be a point where clients expect us to be giving this advice, and it's there's an expectation.
And it all links to the health and well-being of us all, doesn't it? At the end of the day, which I think, for having read MCM's and, you know, Elliott Wood's kind of various kind of white papers, there's this kind of underlining, you know, we've got to take care of our health and well-being and what that means. And I would love to see the high street and retail spaces be spaces where we go to find how we can impact change, not just to go and purchase a product, but I would love to be able to go into those spaces and be inspired and learn, and, you know, look at how these spaces are curated in a way where I'm leaving those spaces and I've learned something. I've learned how to impact something in a different way. I still might have bought a product, but that's not the only thing I've left that space with. And whether that's, you know, in the middle of Oxford Street or it's in my local village, for me, spaces now just need to encompass that real kind of holistic learning and educating piece. I think that's actually been missing. Yeah.
And also this I think from a space point of view is, how does it impact on the people using the space. So one of the things that we ran before lockdown, and we held an event looking at building for education and building schools, for example. Rather than getting architects in to talk about what they do and the approach, actually what we had a panel of a CEO of a big academy. We had someone who actually has learning difficulties and ADHD, and actually his experience of walking those thin corridors in a busy turnaround. We had a teacher there who was talking about their experience of how the space impacts on the learning. And it's about making it fit for purpose in terms of enhancing that experience rather than just building a school that is the experiences of people and the spaces we create and the spaces in between the buildings that we create is really important.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's almost recognizing, the forgotten part of society, the older generation or the people with more needs, and giving them a voice and allowing them to be heard much more so than I think than ever before. And I think that adds to the responsibility that we all should have when we're creating these businesses, particularly where we're designing spaces.
I think it's all linked to the sort of, and I think the pandemic has taught us this or reinforced this, the sense for the need for community on so many different levels, whether that's communities of business working together, collaborating to achieve more, or whether it's the creation of communities, whether it's in high streets, schools, offices, or whatever. But actually, there's a basic human need to foster that sense of community, and in so doing, you can achieve so much more, much quicker.
Yeah,
I said it last week. Actually, somebody said to me, if a business isn't purpose-led, why does it exist? And it's almost a line I want to say every week in every session, because I think it's so critical to every conversation that's happening at the moment. Hannah, is there any questions at all that have come through? I think I saw one from...
Yeah, we've got two questions in the chat. We've got a question from Julian Church asking, John, do you think the last year will stop the move to seek to replicate the home in work with everyone now working or having to work from home? Are there going to be more blurred crossovers causing us to move back to defined changes in spaces? And I've got a question for Mel as well, so I'll ask both at the same time and you guys can pick and choose which ones you answer. Mel's asked, there's a major trend towards 21st century thinking in business about building communities of customers, not just a client base, and trading within networks like B Corp. Do you have any insights around this? So whichever one of those two questions you want to answer, and perhaps we'll go with you first then, John.
Julian, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Can you elaborate on that? Are you?
We've got the copy sorted, and then
Sorry,
that
John.
makes sense.
What I'm sort of trying to say is if there was always a tendency before the sort of pandemic that people were trying to replicate that sort of home experience within the work and within the sort of environment. We're having now work from home for 12 months and everything else now. Do you think that the people will sort of have a throwback to much more defined and less blurred sort of this is work, this is home?
That's a good question. I'm not sure is the answer. I think the needs of the workplace within an office are will have changed quite significantly. The way that people come into the office and what people come into the office for will be different than being forced to go into the office to do all your work there 9 to 5 every day. How that translates into the sorts of spaces that are actually created within an office, whether they're kind of domestic type spaces or whether they're more, I don't know, perhaps focused towards a particular function. I think it will depend on the sector and depend on the workforce, the demographic of the workforce, and their individual needs. I mean, for some, working from home has been a revelation. For others, it's been living hell. So I think that an organization's experience from their workforce and their workforce needs will shape the sorts of spaces that are delivered in a work environment. So I don't think it's easy to sort of categorize one way or the other, if that isn't a get jail answer.
I think generally, Julian, I'd probably say no, in a sense. I'll explain why. I think the office will become a destination. People will go into the office, particularly to do key things that, you know, they maybe can't do as well working from home. But I think you'd have to, in order to answer the question, you'd have to look at why we were trying to replicate the home in the office in the first place. And it's because, quite frankly, a lot of offices were dire and boring. And the things that we get from home, which is light, planting, you know, social areas, comfort, that's what people were trying to recreate in the office. They're the elements that actually made the office a more welcoming place to go. And I think that will continue. People will still want those elements to exist in an office, but I do think the purpose of the office will change. And that's probably where I think it will end.
Yeah.
I just add something to that. One of the things that we've been doing, we've, as I mentioned, with the Building Society, we've been seeing, as we've been slightly coming out of lockdown, we've been seeing an increase in people asking about options, etc. And one of the things that's really noticeable about why they want to look for office space rather than still work at home, apart from the social side, is that connectivity and collaboration with people. I think that's the piece that people are really missing. And we've got a lot of people who are considering the hybrid way of working, but actually seeing the office as that place to really connect and collaborate with each other. And then obviously be able to use the home as that place for focused work and maybe Zoom calls, etc. Not necessarily. So I mean, I've certainly missed the collaboration and connectivity of face-to-face. But yeah, it's time will tell, really.
Yeah, I think some good, Gina, so I'll pop it in the notes as well, some good research. I've been involved quite a lot in the remote work scene because I've been a remote worker for 10 years. And it's been quite interesting to see offices who have been forced to create a remote work environment really struggling with actually how to keep the culture of their business strong and true and alive, because a huge part of that was the interactivity they had within the workspace. So I think there are strides to people changing that, and exactly like Lisa said, you know, there being a bit of a crossover there. But what's been interesting is lots more businesses are now thinking, well, we would quite like to keep this, but there's so much work we have to do around how to keep that culture within our company when people aren't working in the same space and environment. And that's a problem that a lot of businesses haven't solved, and it's still a problem that remote work companies are working on. There's not one size fits all solution for that. But certainly, you know, from when I do the B Corp research and we're looking at kind of the history of business as a whole, you know, industry as a whole, you know, weekends were only invented at the beginning of the 20th century. So we're 100 years on from that. And so things are going to change. People are already talking about flexible working before the pandemic. It's accelerated it, and there does need to be a new way of working. But you know, as John was saying, it's going to be so dependent on industry and sector of what's actually possible to push in those spaces. But I can send some info on that. So I'd like to go back to Mel's question then, because we weren't able to kind of cover that in those answers. So Mel's talking about the trend of businesses building a community of customers rather than a client base, and trading within those networks such as B Corp. So what's your insight around this? Have you found that by being a B Corp businesses, you're attracting more B Corp customers, and your customers tend to shop with other B Corps? I think that's kind of some of the conversation that Mel's talking about. But yeah, it'd be great to hear what the three of you think on that.
I mean, from our perspective, I think it's too early for us to say at the moment, being honest. Our very strong feeling is that it will have a very strong bearing in terms of the customers and the customers we work with, and the communities are naturally created back. But from our personal experience, I think it's too early to say. But the pointers are all there that it's going. It will be a very important part of the way we will transact with our customers in the future.
And I think you know, the benefit of having B Corp certification is that it's measured. You know, we have measurable outcomes that we try to achieve. So, you know, we can easily do a diversity policy and a sustainability policy and do nothing about it. But the fact we're held accountable, I think, will be a real a benefit to our clients. And I think that's something they'll look for and that they'll hold us accountable to.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the increase in, you know, the drivers for purchasing in terms of that emotional connection with the brands that people purchase from, it equally goes with the sort of the other organisations that you actually want to be associated with and work with. And I think the emotional connection, the purpose, the commitments and value becoming really a lot more important. So if you can align those values with certification, I think that only goes to strengthen communities and strengthen the reasons why you would work together.
I'm finding every conversation I'm having at the moment that's unrelated to B Corp, we end up talking about B Corp. And it's very much around the values that are aligned to it. And then the companies I talk to who are thinking about becoming a B Corp are already doing great stuff. So either they're doing that already, that, you know, whether it's through education or having an impact in their community. We're not talking about giving money to charity, but actually deploying skills and learning into the community. But it's also allowing businesses to just think differently about what they're already doing and looking at it in a slightly different way, which benefits them and everybody else it has an impact with. So again, lots of positive things are coming out, even just the conversations. You don't necessarily even, be committed to going through that certification process. Have you found the same, Hannah? Just in terms of those conversations, they're just kind of game changers with people that you've met.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, B Corp works because it can cover all industries and sectors. So it's quite an easy, understandable thing to know what framework everybody's working on, even if you're working in different sectors. But there was a survey by Deloitte that said that last year, 2020, that millennials made up 40% of all consumers, and then 40% of that demographic believe that the goal of business shouldn't be a healthy bottom line, but contributing to society. So it doesn't just make, better business sense and, better moral and ethical sense to be a B Corp, but it's a way to translate that to your customers, because that's actually what customers want to buy from. Businesses that are contributing to society and not just focused on making money. So it makes sense when we're going back to the customer conversation. This is what customers are looking for, an easy way to distinguish which businesses care about their purpose and the planet that they're on. And that's why it always comes back to B Corp, because it gives people a very clear framework and foundation to base that on. And it's not the be all and end all, exactly like Deepak's. It's not like you get your certification and you kind of stick your logo in your website and you're away. You really have to work on it and put the work in and the time and the dedication, not just as a business leader and owner, but also to really explain to your team and your employees and your customers about the value of that certification and why it's important to them and their work and what they do, regardless of what your industry is.
I agree, Hannah, and I think also there's an expectation now, particularly with Gen Z, that when they're disrupting the workplace at the moment, and there's a real expectation that whoever they're going to work for, there's another side to that business. There's a societal impact to what that business does, and that's just becoming a standard now. So not only are you addressing your customer base, but your customer is probably also going to be an employee at some point. So it's that blurring of lines of the kind of between commercial and societal and community and education across the board, which feels like it should be part of every single brief anyway. And if it's not, then it needs to be part of it.
And I think more often than not, Gina, I think if it isn't, actually there's probably a greater chance you'd be called out on it now if it isn't part of the brief. And it's not something that can just go under the radar anymore.
That's a great point, actually. One of the things we haven't really touched on, which is massive, is technology, and how kind of humanizing technology is particularly been a key part of the pandemic. How the use of digital has kind of helped with localizing purchasing. I know Joe's on here, who's a fashion futurist, and I've been having some fantastic conversations with Joe around how how digital is affecting fashion globally, and that's going to be another conversation for Environment Week, which is going to be hugely fascinating. How do you guys, Lisa, Deepak, John, how do you see technology kind of supporting this change? Because it's going to have to. Is that something you've looked at already?
I mean, I think from a technology perspective, I think one of the things that perhaps surprised many people was the speed with which people adopted new technologies to work in a different way as a starter for 10. I think, Microsoft Teams, for example, Microsoft must be, over the moon, the speed with which they got the vast majority of the population adept at using a bit of software is undreamed of kind of rollout of technology and adoption of technology. So I think some of the customers we speak to are really quite surprised at how quickly they've adapted to different technology and different ways of doing things, which I think in itself will accelerate change as well. When people say, actually, well, we did that's possible, so why isn't this possible? So I think technology does have a vital role to play in terms of supporting further change. But I mean, as a subject matter, we've not done any kind of whitelist specifically on technology yet. We're about to start a new series soon, which will touch on that. But I think certainly the adoption of new technology has been profound in the last year.
I think it's also changed the way we collaborate as well. We have global clients, and previously that might have meant they flew over to London to have a 2-hour workshop with us. That's completely changed. At the beginning of the pandemic, we started using digital tools like Mural to facilitate workshops, and they were hugely successful. So actually, I think just the way we collaborate has changed, and I think will continue to change. But also, I think it's also opened up this kind of adoption of technology, and probably more importantly, the behaviours associated with it has, I think, opened up the kind of workforce to be more diverse and inclusive as well. You're no longer restricted by geography, and therefore I think we could potentially have a far more inclusive employee base.
No, I agree. I think there's the communication advancement that is naturally benefiting everybody. The other side of things is actually technology helping us to understand and to work with what we've got. So we do a lot of building information management, BIM, which is around bringing models together. And you can look at that of, well, that's helpful for the construction process, but actually the way we approach it is actually from a circular economy perspective, in terms of how can we use the information that's in a BIM model that actually minimizes carbon, it actually minimizes the materials, and not just from a cost perspective, but from a sustainability perspective. And then take that a step further in terms of, okay, well, if we've got that information, how can we use that for afterlife? So what are we going to do with those materials once we've finished with them in the building? And have we got a plan for that? So we almost have an information strategy so that we know what materials go into a building, but we've also got a plan of what we're going to do with those when they come out, trying to get that circular economy. So technology enables you to have those more forward-thinking plans to really optimize or minimize, I suppose, the impact that your structure or your construction is going to have on the planet.
The amount of waste that we used to incur designing and building retail spaces, campaigns, shopping shops was phenomenal, and often these materials are, we put incredible finishes on them and do all sorts of stuff with them. And they would look incredible, but very rarely, if at any time, would the conversation be around, so what we're going to do with it afterwards, ever. It was just, we're going to do this incredible thing, it's going to go out there, it's going to look amazing, it's going to create impact in terms of sales, and then the campaign's going to finish and it's going to go. And when I look back now at the amount of landfill that we used to create for our clients, it's actually quite frightening. Now for me, the important question is always what we're going to do with it afterwards. That for me should always be the first question in any brief. And there's going to be so many uses in society for equipment, furniture, tables, chairs, you know, anything. And I think the more of us we can almost get together from different sectors to look at what we're all building and making, you know, whether it's some kind of working group or something where we all get together and go, right, we're working on this brief. Where are the needs in society that we can make use of these pieces of furniture? Then for me, that circular way of thinking and doing serves a need, you know, right from day one.
It's almost like having a, sorry.
No, go on.
Just going to say, it's almost like having a meanwhile use mentality, isn't it? I'm going to be using these materials for this at the moment, but then afterwards, being responsible for what happens afterwards. One of the things we're just exploring at the moment is whether indeed you can have a second-hand materials market for the construction industry. So what happens to those steel beams when you're finished with them? What happens to the windows that you don't need, or you know, whatever it might be? And I think it's a really, if the whole of society can have that approach, work with clients to actually look at things that way, and the impact on society would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's an appetite for it as well. We worked with very large media company 2 or 3 years ago, and to relocate their offices. And the starting point for many organizations when looking at such a large office move is everything's new, is start over. We did a complete audit of their existing portfolio of furniture products, and lots of it was end of life, but lots of it was actually fit for reuse and reinvention. And increasingly, that's a conversation we're having with our clients as well in going forward, in terms of what large elements of stuff you've already bought can actually be repurposed and represented in different ways. And we were very fortunate recently to have picked up a new client, and we spoke about this in the conversation with them, and they're an American client, and this was kind of like a revelation to them that this was even possible. They told us after we'd won the pitch that actually it was one of the things that really differentiated us from the crowd. Actually, we were thinking about how are they going to dispose of practically or reuse product in a way that actually minimized the disposal of stuff. So I think there is, if you can talk about these things, people are genuinely interested. People want to know how to do it. So the more people that can talk about this sort of stuff, and again, it goes back to communities, is important, because there is an underlying, you know, most people want to do the right thing. They just don't always know how to do it.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think the food industry is obviously different from the construction industry, but what's been interesting with the food industry is that was one of the first kind of places where they noticed the B Corp movement was a way for them to translate what they were doing to their customers. You know, fair trade to coffee is B Corp to business. So it was very easy for customers to understand and pick up B Corps in the food industry space. And that's also a space that's really looking at waste, because actually, if we would, you know, depending on what research paper you read, food waste is actually the #1 problem for climate action. Sorry about the dog. And there's, you know, since there's the Too Good To Go app, which a lot of restaurants and bars have been using to make sure that their food at the end of the day doesn't go to waste. There's the Olio app, so that people at home can make sure the food that they have at home doesn't go to waste. And you can also have non-food on there. And you're talking about a space now, which is in construction. It's almost like customers are expecting businesses to think about the waste of their products. And actually, it's a good thing for the business to do, because it shows the customer that the business is considering their environmental impact and making decisions that look to the customer as, you know, financially a thing that you're doing that might not work out for the business. But it's not about that. It's about the life cycle of the product.
Well handled, Hannah. See the dog going mad in the background. You know what? We almost need a Too Good To Go app for, you know, for those of us that design and build spaces, you know, where we have this platform and we share what we do with these materials, you know, maybe. That's
exactly what we're looking into it, and how can we create that market and make it as easy as possible.
I mean, the end user at the end of the day, the customer, is going to benefit from that, because we're considering the health and well-being of our environment, whether you know, it's reducing waste or we're physically reusing that particular thing in another place.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're at 11:57. That's gone really, really quickly. I've really enjoyed today. That's been absolutely fascinating. Would anybody else like to make a comment or take yourselves off mute or ask any Q&As about B Corp or the journey of B Corp? John, Deepak, how have you found the the B Corp journey of the assessment?
I mean, it's really made us take a really hard look at ourselves. I mean, I think we actually, as you mentioned before, we were already doing a lot of the right things. They were already in place. So our initial score was already high to start with. But, you know, the areas where we knew we were having a less negative impact, then we had to kind of go back, review those, and decide, you know, we're a fairly small business, so we can make decisions quickly. So it was great that, you know, we had buy-in from John, the board, everyone bought into the fact that we're committed to becoming B Corp. So it's been a really interesting and exciting journey for us. I think one of the things that's really helped is we had several initiatives on the go around sustainability or diversity or mentoring and stewardship, and B Corp just allowed us to bring all that under one umbrella, and actually let's just focus on getting B Corp accreditation. So it's been a great journey. Highly recommend it.
Right. All good, I think. What do you reckon, Hannah?
I'm scared to take myself off mute again in case the dog goes mental. But yeah, no, that's fantastic. I've taken loads of notes, so I'll send it into everyone that signed up on Eventbrite. But if you want it to your personal email, just pop me a private message in the chat and I'll send it over. And Gina and I will be getting this video up on the Better Not Stop YouTube channel if you think it'll be useful for anybody else. But I think there's some really interesting conversations about things that can be taken from different industries and then almost repurposed to work in others. And the construction industry is a fascinating one, because if nobody's looked into the future of cement and steel, then that was mind-blowing. And I've never worked in building and construction, so it's so fascinating just the different facets businesses can look at to make a difference in their social and environmental impact that is almost beyond what you'd consider. And exactly like John said there, he did a proposal, and actually by showing clients that and customers of yours that that's what you're doing, that's the thing that will hook them in and show them that you're a values-driven, purpose-led business. So yeah, fascinating chat. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And there's so much opportunity there. I mean, people want it, so step in and start talking about it, because actually most people would like to do what they feel is the right thing to do.
I think we've just got to keep the conversation going. We've got another 3 weeks of conversations around B Corp. Next week we've got environment. The week after is community, and then the final week is governance. And what's interesting about these conversations is they all link together. So obviously we're talking about customers today, but actually we've been talking about the environment, and we're talking about our people, and we're talking about communities, and that's what I'm loving about these conversations, that they're all connected and integrated. Well, thank you everyone, really enjoyed that. Thanks John, thanks Deepak, great to meet you, and Lisa. If anybody wants to stay on for an extra 5-10 minutes, please do, but thanks again for joining us. Really enjoyed the conversation today. It's fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Right.
Hello.
He's a diva. I'm looking after him for a friend, and I had to carry him half an hour down the road because he would refuse to walk. It's like having a child. He'd obviously not be this badly behaved if he was my dog, but
you starred it out. That was good.
That was really fascinating. Really enjoyed that. Thank you guys. Really appreciated it.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
No, really good. I'm loving the conversations around these kind of, the blurred boundaries of buildings and spaces now, and just keen to just be part of that process and get involved in those projects and those conversations. I think it's just really exciting.
Yeah. There's loads of crossovers, and there's loads of opportunities and loads of avenues that haven't been explored where you can join them up. It's really quite powerful, I think. People will be surprised at how much you can achieve, and it goes back to the premise of community. I think just working together in an integrated way rather than in just silos.
And you're right, John. People want this stuff, you know. We're all craving for change, aren't we? We just all want it to happen as soon as we can.
Good stuff. I'm going to have to drop off, guys. So lovely to
meet you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Bye, Hannah. Bye, John.
Good job, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Julian. Good to see you.
Bye.
Good. On the filling out the forms and that sort of thing, Gina, I've spent about 2.5 hours, 3 hours going through so far. How much longer is it likely to take me? I'm about through, I think it's 2 modules.
Okay. I guess it depends, Julian. If you've got a lot of the things already, if you've got a lot of the policies in place, if you haven't got certain policies in place, but
I've got like ISO registration and that sort of thing. So I've got the policies from that, but I want to actually live it and do it properly, not just fill out a form and say, oh, there's my piece of paper. Yeah. So it probably all needs looking at, and it needs re-examining and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would say it usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half for each section, and that's almost a way.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
For you to just go, because it's multiple choice, right? So for you to almost, and it's got, I don't know if you noticed, it's got that star and that bookmark in the corner. So what I always say to people is like, just set a timer, get yourself a brew, and just go through it. And any that you're not sure about your answer, or you know you're going to need to walk away from and check something in another folder or something, just put a star on it, but just get through it. Then don't even go back to it, but then get the next section done. So then you at least will have that sort of like basic foundation, rough idea of where you are. Once you've got that, there's a way that you can actually download the form as an Excel document, and it basically comes out and it will tell you like, this was the question, this was the answer you put, this is the score you received for it. And then that will give you a really easy way to start to look at, right, I need to review these bits because 1, it's a points-based question. 2, I know that it's something that I need to like have a